a senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Number ZZ9 plural Z alpha. Number ZZ9. I said I've never seen such hideousness in all my life.
Listen to all this,
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
All the second stage tanks now pressurized. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And hello and welcome to HBR Talk 254, Feminists to Advertisers. You're doing it wrong. Of course we're always doing it wrong. But I'm your host, Hannah Wallen, here with Nonsense Annihilator, Lauren Brooks. And tonight we're going to do a bit of market research, or rather research on marketing. What I mean is, full disclosure, this show is not an ad, but we do start out with one, and we're going to talk about ads. So, first we got to do what we got to do, as always. Honey Badger Radio dishes out a smorgasbord of thought-provoking discussions, and as experiences both recent and long past have demonstrated, the provoked thoughts are fighting back. They've made it clear that for people like us, relying on third-party payment platforms like Patreon to fund our work is treading on thin ice, or building our house in the path of a rapidly growing wildfire. In light of this, we strongly encourage our supporters to switch at least their support for us to feedthebadger.com, the most stable way to help us out. And if you want to tip us directly instead of relying on any social media platform's tip jar, the link for that is feedthebadger.com, just the tip. And as always, the same risk applies to our social media platforms, which is why you should further provoke the thought police by, by tracking our thought-provoking discussions on honeybadgerbrigade.com, where you can find your way to all of our content, as well as a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. So that's feedthebadger.com and honeybadgerbrigade.com. And that's all you really need to be able to keep up with us. We're not that difficult, although I get called difficult all the time on Twitter.
Oh, man. On Twitter, I can't tell you what they call me at work, man. Oh, good Lord.
Yeah. Oh, hell.
I'm unapproachable. I'm unapproachable.
Oh,
yes. God. Because I expect people to do their jobs and have, a modicum of common sense. But no.
That's actually a thing that I'm seeing more and more now in the workplace is slackers are using criticism of the personality traits of anybody who works harder than they do, to take them down a peg. And I experienced that at work. It's really dumb. Like it's not that hard to do your job. Like my job in particular, there are mental challenges to it, but it's not rocket science.
Right.
It's not climbing to the top of a 1,000-foot tower to change a light bulb.
Right. We're reinventing the wheel here, people.
Yeah.
This is
it's not cleaning up raw sewage in the middle of winter.
Right.
It's not putting out, well, it is kind of putting out fires, just not physically so. Like, I'm not a real fireman, just an idea fireman. But I mean, I do have coworkers that act like it's just impossible to actually do the whole job. And if I do the whole job and they're embarrassed that they didn't, that makes me the bad guy. So I know exactly what you mean. And this is something that I think, and it's treated as a form of misogyny too. Like, oh, you don't like other women. Well, not if they're gonna lie about me. No, I don't like anybody that lies about me. They can all go fuck off.
Yeah.
But
and stop me from trying to tell the truth. Oh, good Lord. I hate that because and I guess that's, I don't try to get over on people. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not how I am. It's not how I operate. And it really throws me off when people do that to me or perceive me in that way. I just like, how did you get that? But it's, I just put it down to, it's a you thing, not a me thing, because I don't know what to tell you.
Yep, and it's that way in the workplace, and it's that way in any kind of influential area in the world right now. Like in politics, they're pushing for a standard to be applied in academia, in the workplace, everywhere, that it is essentially what we deal with at work. If somebody doesn't want to be accountable for themselves, and you are accountable for yourselves, they have the right to be offended by your accountability, not just exempt from the same standard, but offended by you meeting that standard, and demand that you stop because it's embarrassing to them and it makes them feel bad. Right? Yeah. That's essentially the crab in a bucket thing. You're not allowed to do well, and like I said, I've experienced that quite a bit lately, based on just stupid things, like knowing details regarding whether or not I need to do paperwork in regard to something that's happened to a client. Right? That is offensive, and that is my job. So, and we're seeing the same thing in this article that we're going to go over. Like, we hear from feminists all the time that there's no grand conspiracy to control the way people think, that all of this power and influence that we attribute to feminist advocates and women's groups like the National Organization for Women, that's all tinfoil hat shit. We don't know what we're talking about. Nobody's trying to take away your independence. Nobody's trying to control the way you think. But
you just hate women.
Yeah, you just hate women. What's wrong with you? But, and I'm in the process of being gaslighted on that right now in regard to woke conversion therapy, which is interesting because, like, I think the person trying to gaslight me might actually be a bot that's programmed to, like, deny stuff. But in any case, yeah, this kind of practice, like, has been going on for a long time. You see them influencing law and policy, you see them influencing social standards, you see them influencing entertainment media, you see them demanding representation in entertainment media. Well, if feminism, on behalf of women, has no power and no influence, right? If there is no gynocentrism, how would any of that work? Why would it be effective? If these initiatives have no chance of achieving anything, why are they engaging in them? Right? So we're going to look at one tonight. I got the tab closed here. Let me open that back up. This article is titled "The Ad Industry Has the Tools and Skills to Fight Rising Misogyny." So let's step up. So we're talking about, we're going to sell you a loaf of bread, like this delicious fluffy white bread. This is my least favorite kind of bread because it sticks to the roof of my mouth. But, sandwich bread for kids, I guess. But delicious fluffy bread. We're going to sell you this delicious fluffy bread. Are we going to tell you all about how nice and poofy and flavorful this bread is? Well, no, because it's crap bread. But if we call you a misogynist if you don't buy our bread, and we put all kinds of stuff about feminism on the label, you have to buy our bread. It's a great gimmick. And I think that's part of what's going on here. I think also a big part of it, though, is that advertising does work. Like when you buy an ad and you communicate about your product or you communicate an idea to the public, it spreads, and marketing techniques have been honed so well over the last century that quite often people don't even realize they're looking at an ad, or if they do, it influences them anyway. And it's just like I've had people come and tell me how great products are that they've seen on television, and I'll be like, well, what does it do? I don't know.
Right, they can't articulate a thing about it. It's just, well, I don't know. They think they need it.
Yeah, but you have to see the ad. It's hilarious. That's okay, like
right.
And your car insurance, to get your attention, car insurance and homeowners insurance ads have had to become hilarious. Like all the ones
Flo.
with the puns.
Flo from Progressive, yeah.
We just bought a new house, but we have ants. And then there's a bunch of middle-aged women running around the house criticizing it. Like, I love the ad. I couldn't tell you what insurance company that is. And it's probably one of the ones these people would hate. But yeah, so that's what we're looking at, is this influx of actual propaganda into advertising for unrelated products. They're going to turn around and say, you can't do that. You can't have those women criticizing that house. It's not funny, which it is. It's fucking hilarious. And you have to celebrate women. You have to have You Go Girl ads instead. And so that's what I expect here. But so we're going to go scroll down below this interesting image, which is kind of cyberpunk, weird, multiple exposure image. And
I like it. I love the color scheme. I don't know. There's just something about that's just really visually appealing to me.
It is a good image. It makes me want to write a story about what's going on with that woman, and have some sort of a action conflict that she has to be involved in. But in any case, it's a neat start. But the rest of the article is gonna make you mad. And it starts out that way. International Women's Day is usually a time for the advertising and marketing world to share celebrity or celebratory campaigns designed to empower women and girls, as well as platform the female talent that drives the business. Because that's what advertising is all about, guys.
Exactly. I mean, and how exactly would it empower the women besides the one that they're paying to be?
To create the ad.
Right.
Girl power. Oh.
Right. Like, I just because a woman is in an advertisement doesn't mean that I look at that and say, "Oh, wow, I feel so much better about myself. I'm empowered."
But Lauren, our bread has girl power. You have to like it. Or you're a misogynist. But it's also time to pause and reflect. They always want to pause and reflect, guys. To think about how far we've really come as a business and as a society. And this we're not allowed to do. It's a story that Warren Farrell told a long time back, and I don't remember where it's published. I wish I did. But he was doing an interview with Gloria Steinem, and when he was asked a question about something or he was commenting on something, his comment included the statement that women have come really far, but there's still a lot of work to do. Men have kind of been left behind, and her head just swung around and she just stared at him, and instantly he was persona non gratis. That was it. Right? You can't say that feminism has achieved anything, because if feminism has achieved anything, it might be less necessary and valid. But they just said that, so that's interesting. And in 2023, the current year, that makes for sobering contemplation. Misogyny isn't going anywhere. Between the brutal regimes cracking down on women's freedoms, the global scourge of violence against women and girls, their VOG, and the perhaps surprising rolling back of women's rights to bodily autonomy in countries like the United States, as well as the rather new and disturbing dynamics of online misogyny. This IWD, International Women's Day, we may not find ourselves where we'd hoped to be. Boy, was that a gish gallop.
My God, really?
You think about the label violence against women and girls. Like, what is excluded there? You can't even consider the experiences of men and boys. So the idea that violence is somehow more bad, more wrong, when the target is female. That's just presumed valid.
Exactly. And I mean, by the way, you've already got the Violence Against Women Act. What more do you want? What more do you want? And so we're talking about the global scourge. So what are we supposed? Well, okay, all right. It's International Women's Day. All right, let's have this conversation with the leaders of Saudi Arabia and see how that goes.
Well, and even if you look at that, like, one of the things that people fail to consider, where is the bubble sound coming from? I don't understand that. Like, I don't have that on my computer. Is that coming from your computer?
It might be me.
Okay.
Hold on.
That was twice, and I'm like, what is that? But in terms of Islamic countries, Westerners, we have our... There it is again.
Again?
What? Yeah, did you hear it?
No.
What the fuck?
I just unplugged what I thought it was, and if it's still doing it, then...
Nope, it's definitely... Alright, I now I need to know if the listeners can hear it, because that blows my mind. I'm wondering if Discord undid my sound settings, and if that's the case, we're just gonna have to put up with it, because I don't know what feature it's coming from. Yeah, they're hearing the bubble notification. What the hell? Okay, well, anyway. What I was talking about is Islamic countries that are theocracies. Like, they have their own gynocentrism.
Right.
It's not the same outlook that we have. It's closer to, like... I guess it's not quite like coverture either. Boy, that is really weird. It's really disruptive. Why on earth am I getting this sound notification? I don't have anything open that should be doing this.
I only have this article in Discord, but nothing is... I'm not getting any kind of thing on my end.
Yeah, it's really distracting. I'm gonna take a minute and look at my user settings. Like, what the hell? Like, I'm literally every couple seconds I have a bubble rising in the water, popping kind of sound going off.
Hmm.
And I don't understand why. Like, it's... I think I know what it is. I think my computer has Skype open. Alright, so, and the only way for me to close it, because I don't actually have a Skype window open, it shouldn't be giving me notifications, because I have those turned off too, but it's possible that, because Microsoft has a habit of this, that Skype undid my settings just now, which might mean that it updated or some crap. So, for crying out loud.
See, we like to have our technical difficulties at any random time during the show. It can happen.
Well, for me, it's more about, like, I don't understand why that would happen just now. Like, it's gonna open itself up and update, and my computer's going ballistic, so apparently, yeah, it's something just updated. Every time things update now, they undo your settings. My phone does the same thing. I have a setting for text messaging. Okay, I'm gonna start cussing. This is bullshit. Sorry guys, I'm going into my task manager and force quit Skype because I think that's the cause. Even though it's not open, it's doing something. But while I'm doing that, oh come on, my my task manager's like, "Fuck you, I'm not doing anything." Like, really? Can we not? Is this really necessary? It's misogyny in Skype, guys. It's doing this because I'm female. That's what it is. Holy crap, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tasks open. It's definitely, it's going to be all messed up now because I'm going to end these tasks while it's in the middle of updating. But, like, I don't care. I'll have to deal with it later. There we go. Let's see if I can get rid of those stupid bubble sounds. I set my system up to not update when I'm on the show, and of course, everything else decides that if I'm using my computer to do something, that is the perfect time to update.
Right.
Like, seriously, like I have the computer on all day today. Right, had it up and running. Actually updated my system yesterday. And then turned it off updates for a month, and I'll do the same thing next Wednesday. Go back, update, turn the updates off for a month again, and I do that so that it doesn't update in the middle of the show because of that one time we had that forced update, and that usually prevents anything like this. But then as soon as I sit down, like the computer will be it'll be up, the screen will be up, everything's on it, you can see it, it's on, and it has all day to do these things. And as soon as I start using features on the computer, using apps and doing things, I get this message that this is updating and that's updating. And I swear like they designed these features to update specifically when it's going to interrupt you. And I don't know about Windows 11, Jan. It's like Jan Newman's asking, is Windows 11 any good? I haven't updated to that. I'm updating in 10 as long as I can, because I have basically read terrible things about 11, and so I just I just have rejected it, and eventually how that works. It's eventually going to be required as an update, just like 10 is eventually required as an update for a lot of computers. But I mean, I've got my desktop is still on 7 Pro, so there you go. But yeah, so now that we got over the stupid bubble sound, and I noticed as soon as I X'd out of I ended all the Skype tasks, it quit bubbling at me. And we get back to the article. So, back to the thing about the global scourge of violence against women and girls. And Islamic countries and guardianship. One thing that has struck me in conversations where we hear that's the real patriarchy. Look at that patriarchy over there. Stop talking about our culture and blah blah blah. We have a much more lenient approach to some things than they do, and gynocentrism is. It manifests in Islamic cultures in different ways than it does here. For instance, like here we've got it manifesting as a admonition that you can't question anything about women. You can't question women's word. You can't question women's intentions. Women can lie in court and you can't punish them for it. Stuff like that. But in countries like Saudi Arabia, we hear all the time from feminists about how it takes 4 witnesses to prove a woman's case if she's claiming to be raped, right? Well, yeah, but she doesn't need any other evidence. She just needs 4 witnesses, right? There has to be evidence to exonerate the guy if 4 witnesses come forward like that, and 4 witnesses can include her family members, saying she would never do this, or she would never do that, or she would never lie. That's a witness. But at the same time, in the United States, if you convict a guy, he goes to jail. In Saudi Arabia, you convict a guy of rape, he's going to be hanged publicly.
Yep.
He doesn't get an appeal or anything. You just gonna hang him. In Saudi Arabia, if a man and a woman commit a crime together, and let's say the punishment is a set number of lashes, however many she gets, he's going to get 1/3 as much more. So there is gynocentrism. There is also a lot of restrictiveness in that culture. There's a lot of restrictiveness for both sexes. Feminists only complain about how women are restricted. That is how they were in the United States in the 20s and 30s and 40s. We're not going to complain about how men are restricted. We're only going to complain about how women are restricted. And that continued on up through the 70s and 80s. And sometime during the 90s, they decided they're not complaining about how men are really restricted, but they decided to claim to be complaining about how men are restricted in order to use concepts like toxic masculinity to manipulate you. So we do have a mostly gynocentric focus. Right? Men are so oppressed because they're made to be mean to women by toxic masculinity. Nothing about men's real experience of abuse. Nothing about men's real experience of being kept away from their children. Nothing about boys' experience of being second class in education. None of that stuff. Nope. No. It's because you're made to be mean to women. It's just such a horrible burden.
Right, and because doing so would minimize women's experiences.
Yep. So,
Insane.
Yeah, so this Gish Gallop that we saw in the first paragraph, utter bullshit. Staying optimistic can be tough in the face of a news feed crammed with extremes of violence, from the scale of sexual assaults perpetrated by police officers in the UK to the cruel backslide on women's freedoms in Afghanistan. Yeah, women's and men's, they're dragging men out into the street and killing them, but women have to wear the burqa.
Right.
And it's not that I'm not sorry for both sexes. It's that it pisses me off that they're only talking about women's experiences, and it is arguably worse to be killed than to face an wrongful restriction.
Right. But I mean, and think about it, like when we think about a situation where we have to save lives, it's women and children first.
Mm-hmm.
But even in a situation where it's like you're not getting the worst of it, it's always forever going to be, think of the women and the children first.
Yep. Meteor hits the Earth. Women most affected.
Ugh.
Yep.
It's so selfish. It's so fucking narcissistic and selfish, and nothing to do with equality. Nothing.
No. And I'm waiting for the day there's an actual, like, they finally have some catastrophic event where there literally is a comet heading toward the Earth or some other space debris that's going to do significant damage, and the whole narrative is going to be, what about the women and children? We have to do something. Not all of humanity is in danger.
Right.
Goes on. Just as worrying, though, is the drip of misogyny online via social media, where ideas perpetrated, not perpetuated, perpetrated. Your idea is a thought crime.
Yes.
By the likes of jailed and dangerous influencer, guys, Andrew Tate, find purchase within the impressionable and desperate young minds. Schools are reporting a surge of sexist abuse against both pupils and female teachers. And that optimism wavers. Like, what optimism? Oh, right. I haven't heard any. I bet it's mentioned, though. That optimism wavers further when one considers the sudden explosion of generative AI, which appears to replicate the sexism of the internet, from which it draws its input. AI is sexist.
Well,
oh, God.
Apparently, I mean...
Like,
what isn't?
Great.
What isn't? What isn't sexist?
So we had a patron show a while back that we did specifically in response to there was one of the AI it's called Lenza. I'm like looking on my phone. It's one of the AI profile pic. I never took that off. Creators, you actually have to pay to use it. Like, you can have it on your phone for free, but if you actually want the profile pictures, you got to give them money. At least they're engaging in some capitalism there. But there were a bunch of complaints on Twitter about this AI being sexist and it's like racist and I don't know, lookist or whatever, aestheticist or some such thing, right? And I made a bunch of profile pictures on it to see if any of the claims about it were true. But the claims involved, it doesn't incorporate some details because they're unattractive. So I have this set of pictures that we took when I did a Halloween costume where, that zipper face thing, I put that on, and I think it was over my eye, and I put a few of those pictures in with the set. You give it 10 pictures, and then it's supposed to make these AI profile pictures and everything. And you have different styles you can tell it to use and blah, blah, blah. So I had some pictures with my glasses and some pictures without my glasses. I put a picture of my son in the set to see if it would make me look unrealistic and stuff. And I put a family picture in there with like 8 or 9 faces in it. To see if that would confuse it, and it made 100 profile pictures, and I'm going through, and some of them had some obvious errors in terms of like the AI couldn't parse glasses frames, and so my eyebrows and my glasses frames were like just one thing, but that's not sexist. That's the AI not being perfected, right?
Right.
But this woman was complaining that it didn't include her double chin. It didn't. She's mad. It corrected my double chin, and then people complimented the picture, and it made me feel so ugly. And I'm like, it didn't correct my my discoloration. Like, in fact, it put it all over all the pictures. It was kind of cool. It made me look like some kind of comic book superhero. And that was the other thing. There were people saying it lightened their black skin, and that was racist. And I'm like, well, if in your set of pictures was the lighting the same on all of them,
Right.
because skin tone changes dramatically on imagery with changes in lighting, and you kind of have to be careful with that if you're a portrait photographer to avoid getting an image that doesn't represent the person, like doesn't look like the person. They're washed out, or they're too dark, and you don't get detail in their face. And I, it's one of the things I had to be mindful of as a wedding and portrait photographer for years, is that the lighting has to be good if you want the person in the image to look like they look in real life. But as far as the double chin is concerned, most portrait photographers, if they're taking a picture of somebody that has like a weak chin or a double chin, will position an individual to maximize their aesthetics and minimize their drawbacks. So you might take a picture of somebody leaning forward and sort of looking up at you to straighten out a double chin a little bit, or you might
the best
choose...
thing to do is you stick your tongue to the roof of your mouth, and that's a good trick. But there's
it
a lot
flexes the muscle. And then same thing with like a weak chin. You change the angle of the picture just a little bit, and people can't even tell. So that's not something new. It's not something just AI. But the whole discussion was like AI. Discussion was like, oh, it's misogynistic. It does this because it's dealing with women and blah blah blah.
It's so ridiculous, because so are you blaming now the computer program for being
misogynistic?
Yes. Right, it's so stupid. Or are you really realizing that this thing was programmed by people, and maybe those are the people you want to target with your stupid claims of racism and I don't know. I don't get it, but it's so absurd.
Yeah.
It's so absurd. And it's like, you realize that you don't have to use this thing. Number one. Number two, how much does it really affect your life if your picture comes out a shade or two lighter? You know what I mean? My God, the grievance.
Yeah, I know. Well, and like when we're talking about this particular app that I tested, like I got 100 pictures out of it, and out of that 100 pictures, probably about 20 or 30 of them had essentially drawing mistakes, and the rest, the other 70 or 80, were pretty good. But the mistakes were things like it had difficulty separating, like it was very impressionistic in how it handled glasses and hats and collars and anything that overlaps your face and stuff like that. It can't separate those details because it's not operating like a human brain. So you can't expect it to understand what it's looking at the way a human brain would. And it's interesting how women have a tendency to impute motive on something like that. It is literally not alive in the way that we think of life. It doesn't have organic matter. It doesn't have eyeballs. It doesn't have optical nerves, and there's no operation between the optical nerve and the brain that would be similar to how ours works. So to turn around and then say its mistakes are caused by an attitude toward your gender, can you imagine? I doubt AI even has a concept of that similar to humanity, because it doesn't have sexual reproduction. It gets programmed to exist. So why would it have sexism?
Right.
But that's the motive that's immediately like, oh my gosh, it's sexist. And that's like, if you're going to do that with AI, you're going to do that with everything.
Exactly.
And,
exactly.
But they did. They said text creator ChatGPT, which I have never looked at. I've got to try that out sometime and see if it's as bad as everybody says. From OpenAI, has been shown to create sexist performance reviews, and even its CEO Sam Altman agrees that it has issues with bias. AI avatar generating app Lensa, which is the one I was just talking about, has been shown to have a tendency to create nude avatars for female users, including children. So, let me get this straight. I'm the only person that didn't experience this? I will tell you what's happening there. One of two things. Either the app was fed nude images by the user, or the app was fed images by the user in which the user's clothing was very close in color to their skin and took it to be a nude. Because none of my pictures came back nude. And, like, I would have been really surprised about that if they had. That would have been really weird, because it had no reference material to work with for that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the AI is never going to produce that unless it's been fed those types of images.
Right.
Like, that's something that you should be investigating in terms of, like, if you get nude images back from this app, what did you feed it that produced that? And
what are your children doing online that you're not watching?
Oh, God. Yeah, that'd be really bad. Or the author's pants are on fire. Yes, Jen Bottle, that is very, very possible. Although they have linked to something, but I don't want to click on it because I don't know what it goes to. And, oh, it's wired. Okay. They aren't going to do that. Like, it says nude avatars for female users, including children. I'm not clicking on, but Wired isn't going to publish those images, so it's all right.
Yeah.
Magic avatar app Lensa generated nudes from my childhood photos, says the author. I think that author's pants are on fire. Because I honestly, like, this makes me want to, like, the next time I get an extra few bucks again to just throw away down, the toilet on something, to test the app a few more times with different outfits and head-to-toe shots, because I just don't believe this.
Doesn't sound right at all.
Yeah, it says, Lensa's terms of service instruct users to submit only appropriate content, including no nudes and no kids, adults only. And yet, many users, primarily women, have noticed that even when they upload modest photos, the app not only generates nudes, but also ascribes cartoonishly sexualized features. Like sultry poses and gigantic breasts to their images. I, for example, received several fully nude results despite uploading only headshots.
Is that like a download pack? Like, is that like an extension on the app? Like, do you have, is that an option? I mean, seriously, because what? I have no idea how this works. Can you choose, like, if you look older or younger? I have no idea. I guess you just put a picture in and it pops out whatever. You don't get to, like, specify what you'd like.
You specify, it has, like, you can do cyberpunk or mosaic. I picked mosaic because I found it interesting. Like, you can do a bunch of stuff like that, but it doesn't have, like, make this nude or put a
it doesn't, it's the bang bus,
put a
the
microphone
bang bus
in my
option.
hand. None of that, right? Like, it doesn't have any of that. Put me in the forest. No, you don't have that. And its backgrounds are kind of weird too. Like, it looks like some kind of cross between anime and Dr. Seuss in the background, and maybe a little bit of maybe a little bit of Dolly in there too.
Can I get the casting couch option?
No. But I just somewhere along the line somebody has fed that a bunch of nude images because it wouldn't have that in its repertoire if somebody hadn't done that. And this type of app, I know I haven't used it a bunch of times because I don't really have a use for it. I don't want, I don't know, some of the pictures it created are cool. I might, if I change my profile a picture again, I might use one of them just to show people what it looks like, but I don't really have a use for them aside from that. Like, none of it's really important to me. But girls are always using stuff like that or looking for stuff like that to to create images that look better than themselves or more interesting than themselves to use as profile pictures on social media and get, conversation going about these pictures of themselves. And so I'm sure if somebody fed it a bunch of nude images, it was probably a female. But, misogyny. And the idea of images of children. Now, I did get one image I think that looked childlike, but it wasn't nude. An MIT technology review reporter, Melissa, whose last name I can't pronounce. What the heck?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Melissa H.
Yeah, Melissa H. I'm not even going to try. Sorry, guys. Suggests a further intersection with race and ethnicity, finding women of Asian descent getting partially pornified. Partially pornified.
Particularly pornified.
Oh, particularly pornified. There we go.
With
what? Yes. How about partially particularly pornified? Is it just is it just giving them huge knockers? She's normally she's an A cup, but according to the AI, she needs scaffolding. Right? I'm sorry, but again, this is not. I'm not buying it.
No.
We're barely in the foothills of AI, and we've not yet seen what might arise from this intersection and interplay of ever more sophisticated algorithms turning misogyny viral. In the very worst sense of the word. No, I think the very worst sense of the word viral is like rabies. And seemingly unlimited mindless content generation replicating the biases already baked into the internet. It's tempting to despair and give up. Okay, ladies, if you don't want the AI to make misogynistic pictures of you, there are two things you can do to stop that. One, don't ask the AI to make pictures of you. And two, if you do ask the AI to make pictures of you, don't try to make yourself look better than you actually look in the pictures. That would solve the problem right there. Like, you're going to call that misogynistic when the AI does it, but it's okay when you do it. Doesn't work that way. But, obviously the first one will work better. Don't ask the AI to make pictures of you. Very simple. Right. If you're going to do that, don't complain about the outcome. You can critique it and say, hey, this needs to be tweaked. But, going all, it's misogynistic. No, it doesn't have human qualities. Stop.
No. And I love this last line. It's tempting to despair and give up. Give up what?
Yeah.
Give up what? I mean, seriously, if this thing is so bad, if this misogyny is just so rampant and everywhere, and now, oh my God, it's just going to be viral now. It's just going to get even worse. It's fear-mongering, right? It's fear-mongering is what they're doing. And, it's tempting to just give up. Well, I mean, if somebody... Are you saying that no one's coming to help you? Is this your cry for help?
Yeah, that's basically it. And the sad thing is, what we've just read here, this is them telling the story of the perspective they're coming from in making the suggestions and demands that we're going to read next. This is setting the stage So this is their attitude. The idea that AI is misogynistic, something that has no human qualities to it at all, really, is misogynistic for not catering to feminist sensibilities, that people being able to discuss opinions online that are not dictated by feminist sensibilities is scary and misogynistic, right? That only the experiences of women and girls should be considered. Men's experiences aren't important and don't need to be considered. You know, like, that's the perspective we're looking at. And we got a super chat from Albert Nader Retro, wants to know if you got the email he sent.
I will have to check. I'm sorry, I have not checked my email today.
Okay. But thank you, Albert Nader Retro, for the $2.20. But yeah, and it's like, this attitude is essentially the imputation of misogynistic malice as the response to any given thing. You know, whatever objection feminists have to something, whatever they don't like about something, the cause must be misogyny. So with that, they've said, but brands and agencies may well have the tools and leverage to make a difference. So they've imputed misogyny, they've concluded misogyny, they're mad about it, but rather than advocating to people on their own, like, we don't like this, we want to talk about it, Adland is where they're headed. Adland is packed with people who understand how ideas spread. Duh, that's what it's for. How to nudge behaviors. Nudge behaviors, guys. We're not trying to control you, but we're going to nudge your behaviors. And who are immersed in the world of social media and new technology. Moreover, advertisers hold the money that can fund or not fund the business models and of platforms and AI tools. Let's repeat that. Moreover, advertisers hold the money that can fund or not fund the business models of platforms and AI tools. In other words, if we take over the ad industry, we can control who gets to talk. That's what they're saying here.
I mean, and that's what they did on YouTube. I mean, it's not new, but of course, you know, and of course they were going to come for the AI as well. Because vipers, I swear, they're just.
In I want to say 2012, there was this push started in the UK to put a woman on British currency. And it was funny because they had this mad push. There was all this controversy over it, and then Britain went to the euro, and it became a moot point for a while. And then they went back to the pound, and all of a sudden, you know, like, I don't even know if the discussion continued after that. But it got very heated on Twitter. And, you know, like, there was one guy out of the whole country, the entire nation of Britain, one guy got out of line in terms of how you do online debate. And he was a dick. And that's it. Like, there wasn't, you know, like, there was a lot of discussion about death threats and all this other stuff. The guy didn't actually do that. It was more like ill wishing upon the individual, but they don't know how to differentiate between being wished ill and being threatened, which is two totally different things, unless they think the guy had magic powers to make things happen by saying, I think this should happen to you, or you deserve this, right? It's not the same. Even if it is shitty behavior to say somebody deserves to have something bad happen to them, which it is. But one of the things that occurred that came out of that, was this organization, this feminist organization called Women Action in Media. And Women Action in Media, what they did was run a campaign of contacting advertisers to get them to withdraw their ads, to boycott Twitter, in order to force Twitter or coerce Twitter into creating the report system they have now. And it worked. And that once that was put into place, like, none of it ever got taken away. Like, it never has been reduced, it's never been reformed, it's only ever been expanded. Even Elon Musk really only ever, he kind of altered how it was done, but it's still, got a lot of wokeness in it. And I don't know that it'll ever go back to not being woke unless there is a massive campaign to reverse the trend of not advertising on the platform unless it has this woke ideology in its reporting system. And frankly, there shouldn't even be a reporting system for anything but illegal content like, exploitation of children and stuff like that. Like, obviously that should be reportable, although that should be reported primarily to law enforcement anyway. But yeah, this isn't the first time they've used advertisers to control how you operate in the world. It's just, they're very open about it with this. Where Women Action in the Media was this podunk little website off. They didn't promote themselves openly very much outside of feminist circles and progressive circles and stuff like that. So when I stumbled upon them, it was really kind of random. And when I started alerting people on Reddit to it, and got the same kind of treatment over it that I've had over stuff like this from feminists for years. Oh, it's not that big of a deal. It's just a crazy conspiracy theory. That's not happening. And when Twitter changed its policies and I said I told you so, people got mad because you're not supposed to say I told you so.
Right.
So that's basically what they're up to here. Holding money that could fund or not fund your ability to speak. And media owners, whether online, offline, or a hybrid, can take responsibility for how they shape the environments around us. So it's not just you can't do things we don't like. It's you have to manipulate people the way we want them manipulated. We want to know how the advertising community can use its expertise to mount a meaningful fight back for women that is more than just girl boss posturing. So guys, this is a declaration of war on your independent thought right there. That's what that is.
That is a call to action.
Very much so. So here's the methods they're talking about. And there we go. Follow the examples set by the artists and fighting on the streets. Artists fighting on the streets and online. So I don't know. They're gonna follow Banksy's example, but definitely they're probably talking about other artists. It's easy to get disheartened by the extremist rhetoric being spread on social media, but these platforms can still be used for good. Fanma Moradnoon, I don't know, another last name that I don't know how to pronounce. I'm sorry. Is director of finance and operations at Squeak E Clean Studios, and is, as an Iranian American, she has seen the way that social media has empowered and disempowered, and has been inspired by the artists and creatives in Iran who have used their creativity and platforms to galvanize global support behind a female-led uprising in recent months. So the first step for those in the industry is to think pragmatically and make the most of the tools and platforms that we do have at hand. So it doesn't sound initially, it doesn't sound like anything bad, right? Oh, we're just going to do what artists do. Except there is a degree, like they're talking about street performance and graffiti artists and stuff like that. And the style is basically promoting a narrative using an emotional appeal that is in your face and for which you are sort of programmed to feel guilty if you don't draw the conclusion the artist wants you to draw from the performance. That is how that works. And so that's what we're probably going to see in ads. And I doubt, Tyler Preston says, but does she know the way? And I doubt it. I don't know. But well, maybe she's somebody's queen. As an Iranian American woman living in the U.S., seeing human rights stripped away has unfortunately been a big part of my life. In Iran, among the many rights stripped away from a country as a whole, women specifically don't have the right to choose what they wear, to sing, to dance in the streets, check into a hotel, or travel without the permission of their husbands. The life of a woman is essentially considered half of their male counterparts in so many ways. Now, she's not going to say this, but the other half of that is, if a woman is married and she does something she's not supposed to do, her husband is considered responsible for her actions. Even if she is penalized for them, he will also be penalized. So that's partly why. And again, in Iran, like, if women not having the right to choose what they wear is based on the presumption of men being unable to control themselves. And it is a misandric attitude. Like, that's a religious notion that you know, if a guy sees the wrong curvature of your body part or whatever, he's just going to lose his shit and get all rapey and stuff. Which is pretty much proved wrong by people who live on the coasts of the U.S., especially in the South where it's warm. But men are still treated that way. And then the other part of that is men are completely disposable in that society and are used as cannon fodder and, you know, are responsible for the entire rest of society. I'm not sure about the singing thing, because I know in Afghanistan, which is a different country, but it's all still an Islamic theocracy right now. Nobody is allowed to produce any kind of music. It's considered a sin, and they were hauling people out into the street who were musicians during the time period that Al-Qaeda didn't have control of the country, and murdering them, executing them for being musicians. So, and that wasn't just women, that was women and men. So I don't think that was gendered. But I don't know, maybe it's gendered in Iran. Which, you know, again, is kind of stupid if you ask me, but I don't know enough about the culture to understand why they would do that. So, and the other thing is, you don't see a lot of Iranian men running around dressed like Borat.
No.
And I don't know what would happen if they did. People might, if they thought they were gay, I think in Iran they execute men for being gay. So that would not go well for them either. So they may not have legal stipulations that they don't have the right to choose what they wear, but they do have strict standards. They're very modest in their style of clothing as well.
Yeah.
And to be honest, most places where women's clothing isn't restricted, men still generally dress more modestly than women, and they are presumed to have something different about them than like it maybe that they're gay, or maybe that they're immature, or something, just depending on what criticisms people think are criticisms. Versus, like, if everybody's accepting of being gay, then nobody's going to be like, oh, you look so gay, right? But a guy wearing short shorts is abnormal in the United States. Shorts go down to your knees, right? A guy wearing a cropped top, abnormal in the United States. And among, doesn't mean he's wrong, doesn't mean there's anything bad about it. But for women to say that they're restricted and men aren't, kinda doesn't ring true. Women might have laws, men have social standards that are enforced by presuming them weird or wrong in some way if they dress differently than other men.
Mm-hmm.
So again, we're looking at this and seeing the presumption of misogyny being used. She says, over the last 6 months, there's been a female started and led revolution aimed at winning back some of the basic human rights, which gained the attention and support of a global audience. It has also brought attention to how fortunate we are to live in a country where those types of things are never an issue. Huh. In a way, the advertising and creative industries have so much power surrounding the messaging around these kinds of vital humanitarian issues. And there we go. Like, we're right back to, if we want to make something happen, we should be manipulating the ad industry to impose it on people using surreptitious manipulation of the way they think.
I mean, how can they deny that this is what they're doing? I mean, this is what they... And it's, the thing about it is that this... I think this is more geared towards like the AI thing, but, messaging in advertising has been happening since it's been a thing.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, you've come a long way, baby.
Mm-hmm.
There you go, right there. Nah, it's definitely. I remember growing up looking at advertising through the eyes of a journalist, right? Through the eyes of somebody who, my work was funded by ads, and my local paper that I worked with, we did better selling ads when we reported on local news. People wanted to see their athletic kids in the newspaper. They wanted to see the school play in the newspaper. They wanted to see what city council was doing and know, like, oh, they gave this company this deal to bring this factory in, and now there's going to be, 300 new jobs in this 8,000 person community. Great. Like that's the stuff they wanted to see. And we had like AP feed and UPI feed and stuff like that. So if the president said something and it was relevant to all communities in the country, we'd have a story on it. If it was something like, well, we're going to war, kids are not kids, but 18-year-olds, are signing up for the military, and some of them are being pressured or whatever. Then that would get published. But for the most part, it was who won the football game. It was, what repairs were being done to the bridge downtown. Over like there was a river that ran right through the middle of town. The town was named after it. And what was going on with our giant mud hole of a lake, and that kind of thing. And because our lake had a fish die off. It was bad. It was so bad.
Oh no.
Oh my God. Like a 50 some mile circumference lake that is stocked, not naturally occurring, like, because it was a man-made thing. It was water redirected into a low-lying area as part of the Miami Area Canal System, and so it's stocked, and there's contests and everything, and there was an algae bloom that was toxic, and every animal in the water died.
Oh, wow.
And you could smell it for like 10 miles. Just a little bit. And when you got like closer to it, my parents' house, it was awful. It was just unbelievable. Like, nobody would go outside because the smell was so bad.
Wow.
Like, you could have thought the end of the world was happening. But like that kind of stuff would be in the newspaper, right? And we were way more likely to sell ads for local businesses in particular if we reported on stuff like that than if we reported on, well, the president is in this state doing this thing for these people that have nothing to do with our little podunk community. Like that's how advertising changes what you cover. And this is sort of, they know this, and this is sort of a means of using it as a form of censorship. Like, there's nothing wrong with the people of a community that has a newspaper where the main circulation of the newspaper is in that community, saying, well, we want you reporting on our community news. We can get our national and world news from other sources. But there's absolutely something wrong with them coming along and saying, well, all of Twitter has to be focused on our issues and has to talk about them our way. And no, yeah, I that's basically what's going on here. That is a totally different ballgame.
Mm-hmm.
So, Albert, stop nagging. Seriously, that's, you know, like, that's a feminist job. I hate to be like that, but, you know, you're a dude. Don't nag.
Yeah, man. Well, I don't even let my mom nag me.
So it goes on. Similarly, with women's rights being challenged in the U.S. and beyond, women's rights, and again, if we just phrase it this way and we just call it a woman's right, you're not allowed to argue. That's the answer to that. So the quote right, for instance, to point the finger and scream, and that guy must be guilty of something, like the Invasion of the Body Snatchers style. That's a woman's right now, right? The right to kill your baby, a woman's right now. The right to not be treated as equally guilty of a crime you committed to how you would be if you were a man, woman's right now. Like, that's what we're not allowed to say otherwise, right? So similarly, with women's rights being challenged in the U.S. and beyond, there have been a lot of brands who have addressed the subject, promoting their stance on a woman's right to choose and fighting for that. If everyone uses their platforms to help spread information and create awareness, that is the most important first step to informing others of the current happenings and the consequences that follow.
Yeah, so it's just flood the message out there, right? Like, good God, it's painful. I'm sorry, it's painful because you want the corporations to now have your back.
Yep.
I mean, how do they not already do that? I mean, Jesus Christ, they bend over backwards every month. They have to change their colors on their logos. I mean, I mean, seriously, what more do they want these people to do? But they want every advertisement that they see to be flooded with these feminist messages. And of course, obviously, that's exactly what they want.
Yeah. Yeah, well, don't you realize, though, that the best part of waking up is messages about why you have to have a political stance that is approved by this particular company in your cup.
Right.
I can't believe I listened to the whole thing.
Oh God.
It's bad. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna start meowing at you guys. It's all right. We won't take it to the level of cat food.
Please.
Meow 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 misogyny. Oh my God. Throughout the Iran Revolution, there have been many artists, creatives, because artists aren't creatives, and musicians that have used their platforms to create awareness and help be the voice of those whose voices have been silenced. Informing people and creating awareness by using platforms to spread news that isn't covered elsewhere is one of the bigger actions we can take to gain attention and contribute to the platform. Or continue to inform. Having a bad dyslexia day, really. Let's take a look at this. Now, as far as the Iranian Revolution is concerned, like, the people do have the right, if they object to the way their government is running their country, to change that. Right? There's nothing wrong with the people of a nation updating, reforming their government and reforming their culture in ways that expand their rights. That's fine. And obviously, nobody else has a right to tell them you can't do that, right? But when they start turning it into this male versus female thing, that dooms everything. Because your culture includes both sexes. Your population includes both sexes, and they're both important. And when you start dealing with who is the government going to use to enforce their side of things, it's going to be men. They're going to be in the military or in the police force. They're going to be using weapons, and their lives are going to be at stake. And who is the population going to use to further their cause? That's also going to be men. They're going to have piecemeal armor that they've cobbled together for themselves, and their lives are going to be at stake as well. So if you're just using misogyny as your main accusation against the government, but you're demanding that men sacrifice themselves to fix this problem, then you're already losing the battle. Like, if men didn't care about women, if men were everything that feminists claim, if the whole story really was just misogyny, none of the men would fight for you. They wouldn't care. Your cries would go unheard, your music wouldn't matter, your art wouldn't matter, none of it. Because why would they? If they were misogynistic, they would just look down on it and say, look at what those silly women are doing, how stupid. Why should we pay any attention to that?
Yep. But Hannah, they just need to watch a couple more advertisements. I mean, did you see the latest Coca-Cola ad? I mean, I'm totally sold.
Mm-hmm.
It's just ridiculous. No, just telling people what you want them to hear is going to magically change their minds.
Yep. Yep. It has absolutely nothing to do with the culture having any gynocentrism to it, right? It's definitely not gynocentrism.
I think you have to be a person who is that easily manipulated to believe that other people everyone around you is as easily manipulated as this.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. They are.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's true. Like if you spray the wall, you're gonna hit the target at some point, right? But
like that's if you say, well, we're gonna have women's messaging in advertising, you have to be depending on the fact that people are going to care about it, right? You have to be like that. It's going to strike a nerve with people. We're gonna portray women as victims of this. Okay, well, that only works in a society where people actually care about women.
Yep.
People actually care about women, then it's not a misogynistic culture. Even if you don't agree that it's gynocentric, it's definitely not misogynistic. Misogynistic cultures don't care about women. They disregard them.
Mm-hmm.
There's not very many places in the world where you find that happening.
No.
Yeah, so this push kind of proves, in a way, it kind of proves feminist power. It proves female power to influence culture and to influence changes, I guess, in social attitudes and beliefs. In Iran, they are detaining protesters and giving out prison and execution sentences for people fighting for basic human rights. In the U.S., we don't get exposed to the harsh reality of this as much. We don't get exposed to people being executed for fighting for human rights in the United States at all yet. That could happen if one political outlook takes over everything and shuts out all other political perspectives, right or wrong, and gains control to the degree that they can violate the Constitution and violate your civil and human rights with impunity. Like if they have the power to say we're going to do this and damn the Supreme Court full human rights violations ahead, and then we'll be in deep shit, right? But that's not the way it is here right now. We have had some things like the way the January 6th protesters have been treated, where it doesn't matter whether you're a grandma who visited D.C. and took your picture next to a monument, or a person who was influenced by what really is looking like a psyop now to break windows and vandalize things, and like that small group there gets treated the same way. They both get treated the same way, and nobody is even considering in Washington how people got the idea to do that, and who convinced them that it would have any kind of effect, how that it would work. Much less why we are treating grandma's selfie as equal to breaking in through a window and damaging things in public buildings. But yeah, we're not in that situation, but we're seeing movement toward that situation.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it is largely because it's happening in parts of the Middle East, where to many these types of events just seem like another day. Throughout this revolution, many people have used extremely creative ways to build awareness. They have choreographed dances to famous songs and created videos to catch the attention of a global audience with a unique point of view. One Iranian artist, Shervin Hajpour, created the song. I am going to butcher this word because I don't know the pronunciation, but I think it's Baraye, probably.
I'm not even going to try.
Yeah. At the beginning of the revolution, that became the song, and I haven't heard it. Now I got to look up this song at some point. That became the song of this revolution, and so globally known and celebrated that it won a Grammy for Best Song for Social Change.
Oh boy, that must be why I've never heard of it.
Well, yeah, like, the Grammys used to mean something.
They did.
Like, all those awards used to mean something, and I think people all over the world think they still do. They're not here, and they don't realize what a circus our entertainment industry has made itself into. And so they don't realize that they've destroyed all of the prestige involved in all of their awards.
Right.
But yeah, now I gotta look this song up at some point and see what it's about. And I do hope that the people in Iran gain what they are asking for in terms of, relaxation of restrictions on their lives and protection of their human rights. But I don't think it's a gender issue. But this is what they're saying. That type of creativity. So essentially, this woman is suggesting, or this, I don't know if this was a woman that writing this part, because I don't remember if, yeah, it is a woman that wrote this part. But what she's basically suggesting is we should be manipulating art. That art can't just be art for aesthetic's sake. It has to have a political message. And that political message has to make you feel like there's only one right way to think. And that one right way to think has to be their way. It has to be, accusing you of misogyny and guilt-tripping you over it.
Right. And I like how they open with this image of this Iranian woman, they talking about all the artists in the revolution, whatever, and well, so these people are fighting for actual human rights, right?
Yeah, but pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, but so now they want us to, like, they're highlighting these people and saying, well, this is the map. This is how we have to act if we want to get this feminist narrative into, we have to fight like these people are fighting for their revolution. It's just not a revolution. It's just insane.
Yeah. Well, and I probably have a different opinion than a lot of people on this. Some people draw a hard line on art. Like, if your art has a political message, it can't be art. I think art is something that comes from the heart and soul of the person. If you're using it to express something that to you is deep, meaningful, believed, like, having a political message doesn't make it not art. But if it's propaganda that you are making because you have to, or because that message has to be conveyed, and it's not a deeply held belief, it's just something you're using to manipulate people to gain political power, it's not going to have that. You're not communicating something that you believe, and you're not expressing yourself. You're trying to manipulate. And I don't think of that as being creative art. I think of that more as being, like a psyop. I don't like the idea of calling it not art, but it's clearly not the same. It's clearly a different. It's propaganda, right? It's not pleasant. It's not admirable. It's not great art. It's crappy. It's like fast food as opposed to going to a 5-star restaurant. And a good way to this is that way with writing and everything. Good way to not explain it, but I guess exemplify it would be the short story Geraldine Moore the Poet. And Gen X, we all, I think, had to read that growing up in class. Like, we read that and Flowers for Algernon and a bunch of other things that were to Build a Fire and The Sound of Thunder, things that were intended to make us contemplate deep issues about the human condition, right? Well, the issue that Geraldine Moore the Poet was written to ask us to contemplate was, does your style of communication, does your means of expressing yourself make your expression uncreative, unartistic, unacceptable, right? If your poem is about something gross and ugly, does it stop being a poem if that's your experience and it's what you're expressing? And to get that across, the story tells the experience of Geraldine Moore, who lives in an impoverished neighborhood, basically a ghetto, who's experienced being evicted due to inability to pay rent, and watching men come and move her furniture, and having to move in with family members and live in crowded circumstances, and nothing grows on her side of the street, and she feels downtrodden and lonely and sad and scared and all the things you feel when your whole life is uncertain, and you live in a crime-ridden, impoverished neighborhood, right? And then she goes to school, and her teacher assigns the class to write a poem. And she goes over poetry styles and then gives them this assignment. And Geraldine Moore doesn't think she can do it because she doesn't have anything in her to express that she thinks is beautiful. Mm-hmm. So she writes an apology. Mm. And it's poetic. She describes things in very short, childlike terms, like the sun doesn't shine on my side of the street, is one of the lines, or nothing grows on my side of the street. It's one, if I go back and read it, I can't read it to you because I'll cry. Mm-hmm. Like, I have never read that story without it bringing me to tears. But because it's a story about understanding expression from another perspective. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the reasons why, although I will judge WAP, I don't necessarily judge you a stupid hoe. Because one of those is just marketing for, marketing sex for, yet another, like, money grab from the music industry. But you a stupid hoe is about a fight, right? A conflict between two people. And it may be very rudimentary expression in some ways that, from an outside perspective, but it's really scathing, actually.
I guess I have to say I've never heard that. I might have to look that up. You a
read
stupid
about
hoe.
it. Read about it before you listen to it, and then listen to it. And then picture two girls on the street and one of them getting read out like that. And to me, it's like, okay, yeah, people made fun of that because it's repetitive and only sounds angry. But if you listen to two girls on the street in an argument that preceding a fist fight or something like that, how do they sound? Like, and the first thing they attack is each other's hair. And it doesn't matter what culture you come from. Either it's a bad dye job or a bad weave, or look at how, look at that 5 head. It doesn't matter. Like, that's the first thing they attacked. Why? Because it's the center of your looks.
Yeah, and physically too. They grab for that hair and try to pull you down. Hell yeah, man.
So it's, I'm better than you, I'm beautiful, I'm rich, I'm powerful, I kick ass, I bring home the money, I do great things, whatever. I'm successful, I'm more successful than you are, people like me better. What are you? You're just a stupid hoe. Well, okay, yeah. And it's it's really it is really basic, but it's also really a true representation.
Really? I couldn't tell from the title.
Yeah, it's also a very true representation of what girls sound like when they get into a fight.
Yeah.
So yeah, like we had to go through all that, and I look at this with regard to the use of advertising and the use of the creativity to express things. Like, when that song means something to the artist and came out of frustration and annoyance and rivalry, it has a whole different, it creates a whole different outlook on it, at least from my perspective, right? And I think it's true also with advertising. When you've got somebody that is paying homage to the rainbow because that's the right thing to do, and not because the company itself has had a history where people within the company have experienced changes of heart or have experienced oppression, and they're expressing like their perspective. Like, there's a huge difference in how those ads come across. Like, one of them is the as Rush Limbaugh liked to put it, I'm better than you, look at all the ribbons, that I have on my chest. I care more than you. And the other one is, we want you to understand our side of this story. And I'm cool with, we want you to understand our side of this story, as long as it's related to the product. Like, this is how we got here, this is where we came from. I like when advertisers do that. It tells you who they are, and that can tell you the character of their whole company, their production, their distribution, everything they do, what kind of choices they're going to make, and whether you want to deal with them. But if they're just making their logo rainbow, or they're putting the feminist symbol on stuff and pretending to represent women for a month, like, fuck off with that shit.
Yeah.
So the article goes on, get to the root of the problems. Sexism and misogyny. I went too far on this. There we go. It's the picture showing in the screen excludes part of the top of the tab that I have open, so that you guys don't all have to look at my bookmarks and everything, and all my little apps that I have attached to my, like my my ad blocker and privacy badger and all that crap. Get to the root of the problem. Sexism and misogyny are like weeds with roots that are deep and ancient. So when it comes to tackling the issue, superficial messaging and some breezy empowerment campaigns may not move the needle. So let's talk about the deep and ancient roots of misogyny. I will not say that gynocentrism is natural. I think the concept of natural gynocentrism is a myth. And here's why. All right, you look in history, people will cite the prevalence or the preference of women's safety over men's safety as a gynocentric thing, right? But when you ask them what's the reason, it's because women have babies. It's because women are the last line of defense between whatever danger there is and the children. So it's not really female-centric. Right? Mm-hmm. It's child-centric. It's gene-centric. And historically, women have an honorable and valued role as protectors of children and creators of life, which is exactly the opposite of misogyny. It's treating women as 100% full human beings with responsibilities.
Right.
So there is nothing deep or ancient about misogyny's roots. There's very little misogyny anywhere in the world, really. Women aren't hated. There are different ways that different societies attempt to protect and provide for women. And when women complain about the methods, they use the term misogyny when they're really just mad that they don't like being restricted. And until we close the accountability gap, until women understand that to have rights, you need to be able to be responsible for yourself, we're never going to get past this thing of women crying sexism and misogyny when the ways in which they allow men to sacrifice themselves for women and expect men to sacrifice themselves for women lead to restrictions that women don't want to deal with. But yeah, so empowerment campaigns don't move the needle because people know they're bullshit.
Right.
If the current, yeah. Oh, go on.
It doesn't matter how many times you beat someone over the head with a message. You can't force someone to change their minds about anything.
Yeah, no, you really can't.
It seems that they're missing that, Yes, people get swayed by persuasive and manipulative advertising, and that's what they're pushing for because they know that they can't really change people's actual hearts and minds the way that they can reach them with this deceptive kind of practice of being manipulative and just dirty.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, the one thing they can do is make people afraid to express themselves honestly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, like, you look at the discussions about, for instance, lesbian couples, that there's actually a bit of a phenomenon of lesbian couples adopting boys and then killing them. And it's not like you be dishonest to call it an epidemic, but there's an undeniable, like, this is happening, and there's been more news stories than I ever would have expected to see if I didn't understand what I understand now about political lesbianism and how sociopathic it is. But But in any case, like, to talk about that issue, you would have to be able to delve into, do they do this because they hate boys? Do they do this because political lesbianism, as opposed to natural lesbianism, is dishonest, and that dishonesty stems from other characteristics that might make them less likely to refrain if they have a violent impulse, and so some percentage of them that do act on it? Are they, naturally doing both? Is it a combination of misandry and sociopathy? Are they, unable to deal with boys in general? Like, all kinds of questions that are uncomfortable for feminists to address. And they would much rather you just not talk about this issue at all. This is, this is misogynistic. How dare you consider this to be anything but a random occurrence that doesn't mean anything, and who cares anyway? It was a boy, not a girl, right? Mm-hmm. That's the attitude we get from that. And it's really all about making you afraid to talk about these things, making you afraid to explore the idea that being female doesn't necessarily determine whether someone is a good person or not. And from the perspective of, treating altruism and pacifism as good, where being malicious and violent would be considered bad. Like, we should be able to say that, by the way. But yeah, if they can just shut you up, then you don't get to talk about any of that, and it never gets addressed, and then they can go on promoting the idea that this is how women should live, and so on. Albert Nader Retro gave us $2.20 Canadian, said, lesbians killing boys sounds like the Amazons. But yeah, so there you go.
Death by snoo snoo.
Yeah, death by snoo snoo. No, God, some of these stars. What at one point we're gonna have to just swallow the bitter pill and do a show about. I hate talking about bad things happening to children. It just makes you sad, and it hurts, and there's nothing to, like, you can't fix it. It's already happened, right?
Right.
But we're gonna have to talk about that phenomenon. And like I said, it's not an epidemic phenomenon, but it is one. It is a phenomenon, and there are causes that, like, we got to figure out why that's happening if we want it to stop, right? If the current AI hype has our attention focused on the generators, DDB Aotearoa has headed upstream to look at the data that populates the internet itself, and the search engine biases that bury achievements by women and other marginalized groups. That's another interesting thing, right? Because what they're calling biases, you kind of have to wonder, Google already manipulates things in a political direction. And I've actually, like, known things exist on the internet and searched in quoted terms with the actual title and keywords of what I'm looking for, and it will hide it if it's politically incorrect. And, promoting women is political correctness, right? So if Google is hiding achievements by women and other marginalized groups, it isn't because it's manipulating against those groups. It's because it's manipulating to give you the impression that those groups are being oppressed by failure to highlight them. Together with Team Heroin, that's heroin with an E at the end, they've created Correct the Internet to highlight and correct inaccuracies in internet search results. In other words, they're going to manipulate your ability to find information even more. Particularly pertaining to sportswomen's successes. And then it introduces the CEO of this company, Priya Patel. I don't know if it's pronounced Priya or Priya.
Probably Priya. Usually Priya.
At least I'm not totally ignorant. Like, I know how to pronounce Patel. I know it's a short name in comparison, but I'm gonna make sure I...
Why are they highlighting sportswomen, I wonder?
That's a good question. It's really... Like, sports are a nice accomplishment, and it's not that they're unimportant. You know, there's prestige in that, and athletes can be good role models if they live their lives in an admirable way, or if they live their lives in a particularly healthy way. That kids can be like, look, I can be strong and fast, or agile, and have high endurance, or whatever, if I eat healthy and exercise a lot and do the things this athlete is doing. Like, that's beneficial. But we've had a problem in the U.S. where we've created a party atmosphere in professional athletics and college athletics that has led to athletes not living lifestyles that are either admirable or healthy, and making news for things that are neither admirable nor healthy. And all of a sudden, kids are admiring exactly the wrong things.
Yeah.
And that's not good. Albert Nader Retro gave us $2.20 Canadian and said, lesbians killing boys sounds like the Amazons. Or at least, yeah, I don't know if the Amazons of popular lore were ever real. I don't know what the actual culture there was. I've always kind of wondered. A civilization like that wouldn't last, that's for sure. But yeah, it does sound like pop culture representation of the Amazons. But let's see. I think that's, yeah. Where am I on this? There we go. No, that's the paragraph I just read. Our fundamental ambition, this is going to be the last thing I go through. Our fundamental ambition with this campaign is to shine a light on the inherent biases online and ask for help. We certainly cannot change the internet by ourselves, and we hoped to get public awareness and advocacy, plus meaningful support from different brands. So in other words, our political faction can't make people change their minds, with our arguments. So we would like for corporations to get in on it and manipulate people on our behalf.
Mm-hmm. And they will.
Yep.
They will.
We hoped. Yeah, they will. We hoped that by creating a feedback tool, we could report statistical inaccuracy directly to the search engines and, over time, truly affect some change.
This is going to be the thing that this is going to work now, right?
Yeah.
Finally, we're going to affect some change, and this is how we're going to do it. Yeah. I believe them. I've bought your advertisement, okay?
I'm gonna pet peeve here for a minute. It is supposed to be effect change with an E, not with an A.
Yes.
just so, yes, when you cause something to happen, and the result, you're calling the result and an effect, and you say that you have affected it, you having affected it has A, and it being an effect is E, but effect change is E. It's and it's hard to, it's one of the hard ones for people to keep track of, but it is incorrect the way that it is in this article. So like they've messed that up, and I can't remember what makes it different when the word... Yeah, okay, so to affect something is to have an effect on it, right? To affect
And
something, affect something is to have an effect on it. But as a verb, the verb effect means to bring about or produce.
Yeah.
Whereas the verb affect means to exercise your agency upon.
Right.
So effect is almost passive in the way it's described. To bring about, to produce. It's talking more again about the result, whereas affect is talking about being the cause. I affected this. I am taking responsibility for affecting this. I guess it's very subtle, but so I guess it's not something I can criticize too heavily. But if you're qualified to be a CEO of something, and then you should at least be able to have someone grammar check your work before you send it to a publisher for mistakes like this. Or for that matter, use something like Grammarly, which should have corrected this. Albert Nader Retro says, according to 2 myths, Amazons would kidnap and rape men of all the Gargarians tribe. If they had girls, they kept them. Boys were sold as slaves or killed. I bet they were sold more often because you don't make any money when you kill somebody. You hate to be mercenary about that, but in all honesty, if there's a system of government behind it, then they would sell them instead of killing them, unless they were afraid they were going to come back and take down that civilization.
Yeah.
So, alright, goes on. We certainly cannot change... Oh, there we go. We hoped that by creating a feedback tool, we could report statistical inaccuracy, and what? The search engines would do what we want. Ultimately... There we go. But ultimately, to do that, we need the tech brands and platforms. In other words, they have to obey. They have to do what we want.
Yep.
And this campaign is very much an invitation. Invitation, guys. It's not pressure. It's not a pressure campaign. It's an invitation for them to change, engage in discourse, and look at their technology and think about what they could do to promote a better outcome. We absolutely understand it's not easy, but we don't believe it's enough to simply say AI has learnt from humans, so we must live with the outcome. All search engines acknowledge the best search results they promote have many factors and inputs. In this instance, we would love for them to weigh statistical accuracy over society's inherent and historical preference toward males. So they basically are presuming a patriarchal bias, and they want to counter it by putting information they like or claims that they like ahead of information that people are finding more valid.
Yeah.
A parallel example would be if you were to search, what is the tallest building in the world? There is a statistical proven answer for that, no matter who you are or where you are searching from. And the answer is Burj Khalifa. At 830 meters, that statistic is undeniable. If you ask what is the best building in the world, then the answer is naturally more subjective, and that's why Google serves up 9 options for its first-ranked result. We would love for that same approach to be taken during a search for women's achievements. When the question is statistically provable, for example, who has scored the most goals in international football, then non-gendered, factually accurate information should be served to everyone, no matter who you are or where you are searching from. If the question is more subjective, for example, who has scored the best goals in international football, we would love top-scoring women to be ranked alongside the men in the search options that are returned. So, why? How do you know that their goals were as good? Were they against opponents that were as hard to beat?
Probably.
Yeah. No. Because when women who complained about what they were getting paid to play soccer, or paid to play soccer. And this is when they say football, they're talking about soccer. Since we're speaking to a large American audience and then also a worldwide audience, when we hear football, we don't think of soccer, we think of American football. So, yeah, they're talking about soccer. The soccer team, the United States women's soccer team, they complained out the wazoo about their pay, but they had some sort of a game against a bunch of high school kids, and they got beat. Boys beat them. Men, they didn't even play against men. Boys beat them. So, and, feminists will try to say they threw the game, but I've seen video from that game in the past. No, they didn't. They just weren't able to beat the boys. They didn't play better than a high school boy team. And they were the pros.
I love that.
I think as an industry that collaborates and partners with brands, we can all play a role in fighting back. For DDB Aotearoa, what a name. We invested our time and talents to try and architect a tool. Architect is a verb, that's neat. Try and architect a tool to address the root of the problem, i.e. trying to provide accurate factual search results. So essentially they're manipulating the search results. They decide what is accurate and factual, and they present what they approve. And they're starting out by claiming, statistical accuracy. The number of meters high a building is does determine whether it's the tallest building or not. But when you go back to the statement that they want the women to appear alongside the men, what makes a goal better is quite subjective.
Right.
It's not.
They're trying to, blend objective and subjective facts.
Right.
Here.
It's not just about things like how far it was kicked or how acrobatic the kick had to be to get it past it's also, what were you defeating? Were you defeating a group of people who has honed their skills to the degree that nobody else can beat them, or are you defeating a group of people that can be beaten by a high school team if they happen to be of the opposite sex?
Right.
Like, there's a huge difference there. It's not as exciting when you know that. But yeah, we believe that if young women can't even access accurate information about the achievements of other women, it's even harder to imagine positive outcomes for themselves. In other words, while men have been firsts at things throughout history, while men have taken risks, climbed things that nobody has ever climbed before because it's there, done things that nobody has ever done before because somebody's got to try this to see if it'll work, made things that nobody had ever thought of before because there's got to be a better way to do this XYZ thing. Let me explore the use of these tools and this material and this methodology and so on, right? Without having to have some other guy do it first, without having to have some roadmap for them to walk down that somebody else has walked, even if it's for another accomplishment. Then women can't do anything unless another woman's done it before them.
Yeah.
And seeing a man do it doesn't convince a woman that it can be done and that she might be able to do it. Because apparently women are so solipsistic that we don't identify with men as human beings.
Mm-mm. Sad.
Yeah. It really is, because it's basically a way of discouraging women's success in life by telling them that you don't have permission to have initiative.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have permission to have ingenuity. You don't have permission to be gutsy. You have to have the safety net of somebody else doing it first. All right, that's it. Or you got to sit back and eat bonbons and crochet doilies or something. I don't know. It just blows my mind. Like, why you want to put women down like that? But that's what this is. That's putting women down.
Yeah, absolutely.
For all brands, though, there should be a comma here. God, this drives me nuts. For all brands, though, the options for fighting back can be relative. I know English isn't her first language, so that's her excuse. That excuses it. Can be relatively simple and meaningful. Really focusing on the content, it might be. That's really bad, though. I'm gonna be really sad if it is her first language and she still made those mistakes. But really focusing on the content we put out into the world and applying positive standards that can make a huge difference. By this I mean everything from diverse casting, ensuring rich and positive characterizations of women, refraining from unnatural retouching. In other words, don't make women prettier using Photoshop and shit. And really creating engaging stories about women, by women, and for women is something we can do for an industry. So some of that I agree with. But
yeah, I mean, you're more than welcome to do that. But you're not entitled to the same results. You know what I mean? If it's good, then people will consume it, and you will reap the rewards for it. But you can't just say, all right, well, I've made this movie and it's all about women. It's all by women. It's all this vaginas all over the place in this thing, right? It's you gotta see it. But if it's not a good plot, if it's not interesting, if people don't want to watch it, then it is what it is. You can't make people like something just because you really, really want them to.
Yeah, and where I do agree with this, like, I am sick and tired of feminists telling us that representation for women has to involve taking something that was made to portray and represent a man and putting a woman in his place. Like, that's not representation, okay? That is you waiting till an opportunity to steal someone's seat. Right? That's not how it works. And there are stories, great historical stories. There are fiction stories. There are heroes' journeys that you can tell about women without taking a currently existing bit of entertainment media and swapping genders or swapping races. It is it's a slap in the face, really, to do that. To instead of doing something original and compelling, to just swap genders or swap races or swap demographics. It's like, we're not a mix and match outfit that you can, like, oh, well, I'm going to do this shirt instead of that shirt this week. Like, that's not how we work. We have a whole spectrum of things that are true about us individually. And when you do that, when you we're just going to do this, take this generic attitude about this story, and it doesn't matter who the protagonist is in this story, we're going to take this story and make it about this other protagonist, and that's good enough for this concept of representation. You're represented by something that was not created for you in the first place and not about anything to do with you in the first place. And you're going to like it. It's really leftovers, basically. You're only going to have leftovers for the rest of your life. No freshly made dinners, no freshly made media, just leftovers. How is that beneficial? How is that great? How is that not misogynistic? All women deserve is leftovers.
Right. Well, this is what they're signing up for. They want these unrealistic, unrelatable characterizations of women, right?
Yeah.
But don't you dare enhance their boobs or lighten their skin,
Right,
because that's
right.
unnatural. That's a bridge too far. That's going too far. Don't make them physically appear different, but they can be just the most outlandish character that you've ever heard of. I don't get it.
And that's why I like that she's saying, creating stories about women rather than usurping men's stories, creating stories about women by women and for women. Like that actually, if they were doing that, I would be ecstatic. There's a few stories that I think could really stand to be told. One of the problems, though, is that like women's stories aren't, they're individual, but they don't happen in a vacuum. And a lot of these feminists don't like it when there are men involved, even if they're playing a supporting role and they're not center stage. And so you'll end up with stories, if feminists are doing it, you'll end up with stories that either exclude information or are incomplete in other ways. And that's probably part of the reason why they have to gender swap, because if they gender swap, they can just take out all the men.
Mm-hmm.
So she wants, basically, she wants advertisers and other media to focus on women, to focus on not making an aesthetic impression, but making a storytelling impression. And she wants diversity. So, not just white women, and possibly no white women at all.
Yes.
And I think since it's 9:30, we'll stop at Make AI work for us. So next week, we're going to start by reading what Amelia Markham, senior planner at 5x5, an agency that has been doing its own research into misogyny and its intersections with social media and AI, has to say about making AI work for feminism.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so let's see if we have... I think I got all of the actual super chats. So I'm going to look and see if we have anything else here. I think we probably do. And up here, I should be able to see our... I'm in the live show chat right now, so I gotta move. Good grief. Our Discord is huge. Like, some people are upper class, high society because they have big balls. We have a big ballroom. We do not have any super chows this time. So I will say that. And let's look at Rumble. Open Rumble. That's not Rumble. Okay, so Rumble, we have Nobafan gave us $1 and said, I remember Titanic 2. There was a Titanic. How do you have a sequel? The ship sank.
What?
I remember Titanic 2 about a decade ago. Men abandoned the women and children idea and got shamed for it. Was it... So, I have a question now. Was Titanic 2 about it... it had to be about a different ship. Obviously, or a different tragedy because the ship sank, or was it a movie about when divers went down to examine the ship? Because I don't think there would have been children. There might have been female divers, I don't know, but I doubt it. But then Nobafan21 gave us another $1, said, sorry for only sending you $1 each Rumble rant, but unlike YouTube, adding more money on the slider doesn't allow me to type more, so thank you for your Feed the Badger on your website. Never apologize. Like, you send what you can, and we're grateful for it. And, that's really all I've got to say about that. Nobody owes us anything. We ask because it does help us. It makes it more convenient for us to take time away from, like I pick up fewer hours at my night job, and have more time to make videos if if I get a stipend from Honey Badger Radio. That helps a lot to do that, and things like, sometimes I will get more convenient food at the grocery store instead of stuff that needs, well, actually frequently, instead of stuff that needs cooked, so I don't have to take time to for aspects of self-care and stuff like that. I can take time away from that to do something like this. And I'd honestly rather have the opportunity to do that work than do a lot of mundane tasks and stuff. So, but it's not, like I said, it's not something. It's not a debt that people owe us. It's not something you should feel bad if you can't do it. So, and again, the Feed the Badger on our website, just so everybody knows, since I'm talking about it, it's if you look at honeybadgerbrigade.com, if you look at like any post or our main page, with the post listed on it and everything, our the little 3-bar drop down menu is it shows for me on the right hand side of the page, and it's across from the title, the Honey Badger Brigade title, and it has you can actually scroll quite a bit down for different things. You can see it has links to the previous months and months of articles going back to 2012. So we've been running this blog now for 11 years. And different people's comments and posts and all that stuff. And then it also has a link to our fundraiser. It has a link to feedthebadger.com. And then it also, somewhere on here, has a way, I think, to get into the free part of our Discord. But and all the different categories that you can look at, the different tags that we use, and so on. So, in any case, so there's that. And with that, with no more... Oh, we have a super chat from Albert Nader Retro, gives us $5.50 Canadian, says, one of the best hero's journeys ever was Xena Warrior Princess, as it was also a redemption story. They didn't weaken Hercules to make her look good. And yeah, that is a neat thing. And I didn't really get into it at the time very much. I've never really been a big TV watcher, so when I do, it's usually anime or like I watched the X-Files except for the last season. I really didn't get excited about the last season, and a lot of weird like B grade stuff like Lex, but I didn't get into like the whole look, we're looking at these ancient things, or none of that stuff. I didn't get into the vampire stuff or none of that either. So the stuff that was popular, like people would be talking about it, and I was always clueless. But yeah, I probably had to go back and watch it, because from all the descriptions of it I've heard, it sounds like a show I would enjoy. But let's see. Neat Scholar said Titanic 2 proved that the one thing the human race learned from history is that history never taught anything to the human race. That was great. Yeah, history doesn't teach. There is no, like, teacher is almost a misnomer. Like, people, what people think a teacher does versus what a teacher does. Like, you teach yourself everything that you've ever learned, that you've ever really learned, and not just memorized or viewed and then forgotten later. Like, that's been learned through discovery, right? Nobody sat you down with a chalkboard and gave you a technical explanation on how to crawl or walk or speak. And when you learned your language from your parents, you learned by listening to them speak it. Right?
Yep.
You didn't learn by them sitting down and saying, this is the word no, which is like the first word every kid learns because they hear it all the time. No. And that's the first thing they say back to mom and dad. No. You know. And then they have to learn that I'm allowed to say it and you're not. Which is bad. You know, like but yeah. Nobody sits down with a chalkboard and writes the word no and sounds it out and has the teacher or has the student baby sitting in a little crib take notes and all that, because that's not how you learn. You learn through discovery. You hear it over and over again, and eventually you figure out how to make your mouth make that sound. Right? You see people walking around, and you feel how your muscles work, and you figure out how to use them to crawl, and then you figure out how to use them to walk. Like, learning through discovery is the only thing. Teachers guide your learning through discovery. That's all they do. And if they're making you memorize stuff, or they're spoon-feeding you information and demanding that you accept it uncritically, that is not teaching.
That's indoctrinate.
Yeah. Marin, I think this is Ribaric. I hope I'm not putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable there. Wants to know the names of the Titanic's sister ships, and I only know one. I know there were two ships, two sister ships. I know one was called the Britannic. I can't remember what the other one was called, but I do know that they had the same flaw in manufacturing, and I know that the Britannic also sank, and if I remember right, it also broke. And it's that the flaw was something to do with the way that the steel was made. I can't remember the name of the other. There were three. I swear there were three. But in any case, it made it brittle the way that it was forged, or I can't think of the other term that gets used for shaping steel into solid objects, but smelted or something. Forged. Anyway. Forged. But yeah, well, that's the first. There's another name besides forged, and I can't think of molded, something like that. But there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. The right way makes it Olympic. Thank you, Packard. Olympic. I should have remembered that. Jeez. And it's a soft CH sound, so it's Ribaric. That's neat. But yeah, if I remember right, the way that it was done was the wrong way, and the hull was brittle. Tempered, there we go, Sean Clark, thank you. Yes. It was tempered incorrectly, and the hull was brittled, and the reason that the ship sank was because it was easy to breach. The hull was easy to breach as opposed to difficult to breach. And I think... yeah, they all had different causes, and Marin Ribaric says, didn't the Britannic sink due to a mine? That might have been it, which it wouldn't. I don't think it would have mattered how they made the hull. If it hit a mine, that was. But I do think they were made using materials from the same manufacturing process, and if I remember right, that was the problem with the iceberg. It wasn't just that they hit the iceberg, it was that the breach was bigger than it should have been and worse than it should have been because of that problem with the way the metal was tempered. But anyway, enough about ships, because that's one of my, you will never see me get on a cruise ship if I don't have a reason why I absolutely have to. Right? If I'm escaping something worse, that, no. Then otherwise, no. I'm not interested. Besides the fact that they are floating petri dishes, honestly, I don't like being on the water. I like being in the water. I don't like being on the water, and that's that. No, no, cruise ships are not fun. Well, maybe for other people. No judgment for anybody else. If you want to do that, people do all kinds of things for fun that I don't I don't like to do. So, but yeah, not my thing, and never going to be my thing. I get seasick, and I don't want to expect to not be in the water and then be in the water, because that's how you end up drowning. So, but with all of that said, we have come to the end of our show. And at least this sausage is kind of a weird subject. It's not like a hot button subject, but the underlying thing that we're really dealing with here is the allegation that it's just a crazy tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, that feminists are using media to targetedly manipulate the way you think against your will, and sometimes against the will of the media in question, where they're engaging in pressure campaigns and stuff. Like, that's not a conspiracy theory. It's real. And this is evidence of it. This is a bunch of women that have come together to talk about doing this and plan how to do it. So there you go. Like, once again, we're gonna run out of conspiracy theories. There is gonna be a conspiracy theory shortage, a conspiracy theory crisis. The craziness is gonna run short, and we won't have anything left to laugh at because they're all coming true.
Yeah, pretty sad.
So thanks for participating in Tinfoil Hat Night with us. We will have another Tinfoil Hat Night next week. So bring your own. If you prefer to use a tinfoil fedora, by all means, go right ahead.
Mine has cat ears.
Oh my gosh! Now I'm picturing that. That's so cute. Thanks, Lauren, for coming on and bringing the personality to this otherwise very dry subject. Aside from talking about sinking in a cruise ship, that's not so dry. Thanks to everybody who works in the background to make HBR Talk happen. And good night, all.
Good night, guys.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.